green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Go. And a good Tuesday mini bye week morning, Birds fans. You got your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here to hang and talk 2 hours of Eagles football with you this morning. Thanks for streaming in. Let's see, we got a couple of good numbers of people already in here. Beat the rush. I'm not sure exactly how many days there are left shopping till Christmas, but go ahead and hit that like button right off the bat. Do it. Feel better about yourselves. We'll feel better about you. Let's have a love fest here this morning. All right, let's start the show.
Ooh, first Christmas reference, I think. That's my first one of the year, Joe.
Okay, yeah.
Nice.
Just
got to get in the holiday spirit.
Came out of left field. Yesterday, you got a media session with the first Pander-in-Chief, Johnny Mack. Regaling his Phillies red.
Phillies postseason's hoodie on, I think. So, he's gearing up.
Was it postseason specific? Yeah. I didn't even know. I just saw his Phillies. All right, well, he's sucking up as usual. Nick Sirianni did his game after, although it was a couple days way there after his Monday news gathering. And as expected, he admitted that, they're going to be without Avonte Maddox. He's going to have surgery, so more than likely done for the season. Certainly done for the regular season. They left the door open a crack for a potential playoff return. Yeah, highly unlikely if that's going to be the case if he has to have full-blown surgery for his torn pec muscle. And the coach is optimistic that they're just going to have to move a couple pieces around. They're not going to have to go outside the organization. He likes his in-house choices to cover their in the slot needs. You buying what Nick Sirianni was trying to sell yesterday?
No. But, I compared it to last year when they went outside the organization for Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. They had that first game where they gave their in-house option, which at the time was Marvin Wilson, an opportunity in Houston. It didn't go well, and that's when they quickly moved in another direction. I think the same thing's going to happen here in Tampa. I think it's going to be Goodrich, and if he plays well, I think he'll get another week, and if he doesn't play well, I think how he might start burning up the phones. I think it's going to be similar to that. As a coach, you always want to be optimistic. You always want to lift up your guys. But I mean, that's difficult because not only have they lost Avonte Maddox, but they lost his backup in the preseason, his projected backup in Zach McPherson. So you're down to number 3, which is, you can imagine, difficult in any position in the NFL when you're down to the third guy. And it's where the Eagles are in the slot, and we'll see how it shakes out. But I'm not surprised he was optimistic, but I think, if you got out the truth serum, the sodium pentothal, I think you might have a different answer.
And I think your answer is a very accurate one. He could take the sodium pentothal today and maybe pass the test. Let's see how Monday night's game goes against the Buccaneers, and then give him a little bit more of that sodium pentothal. And it may be a different answer because we'll get a first-class look. I certainly agree with you that Goodrich will be the number one guy. Maybe the thing that is more interesting to me is how often, if at all, will they drop James Bradbury into the slot? They did work it out during the preseason and gave him rotations and snaps in there. The party line was that it's going to be for very specialized matchups against other teams who have very good pass catching tight ends and or tall wide receivers that they may put into the slot, that he'd actually be a better matchup than Avonte Maddox. Well, we don't even have the Avonte Maddox option anymore, so it would be he or Goodrich. I think they meant it when they did it. It wasn't just for a fun exercise. And I remember Bradbury's quotes about, oh, it gives you a different look at the defense. I'm just enjoying myself. And he made it sound like a lark that he was doing it. But the coaching staff seemed a little bit more serious about it than Bradbury did. And if he was good at it, it does give you a limited option depending on matchups. I'll give you a guy. Oh, I don't know, like Mike Evans, who is killing it again this year, the first couple of games for the Bucs. Even though he's not happy with the contract, he's going out and playing really well. If the Bucs try to use him in the slot, do you think we can see Bradbury on Monday night making that move inside?
Yeah, I mean, in small increments, yeah. But I mean, how much is Tampa Bay going to use Mike Evans in the slot? I mean, that's not what he does. So yeah, I think it's more likely, Chris Godwin in the slot, and you don't want, James Bradbury against short area quickness. That's not his game. His game is dealing with people like Mike Evans outside. That's why I don't buy it. I mean, why are you taking an all-pro? This is an all-pro corner last season. He's never played better. Why are you taking him out of his comfort zone? Never made any sense to me, except, as you mentioned, when Travis Kelce shows up. When, interesting, last week would have been something we could have seen with Hawkinson. Maybe he would have been in the slot dealing with Hawkinson if he didn't have the concussion. Those are the types of matchups I think they were working for with Bradbury potentially moving inside for short increments. And then, Maddox maybe is on Jordan Addison, which is a better, matchup in theory. But we never got to see it because he had a concussion. Yeah, but long term, no. I mean, Godwin plays outside as well, obviously, but he plays in the slot. They don't have a great slot receiver. I think they're using a rookie. But it's the typical slot receiver, at least from a size standpoint. It's not the giant sort of, if you think of it from an Eagles perspective, Jason Avant or Jordan Matthews slot player. Maybe in a week where that was something in the mix, maybe you see more Bradbury, but I truly believe it's matchup driven. I've been told it's matchup driven. You might see it when Travis Kelce arrives, and something like that, but not every time nickel James Bradbury is going to be the slot quarterback. That doesn't make any sense.
Right. And that's why when you first told me they had Bradbury, I'm doing, why would you do something like that? You got a Pro Bowl level quarterback playing outside. You want to move him inside. Didn't seem to make sense after the explanation made a little bit more. And I think it will be with Maddox out something they may tap into more than they were going to, but it's still only going to be on a limited basis. And one of those guys I may try it against is CeeDee Lamb, but that's down the road. They don't play the Cowboys the second half of the season because I watched that Cowboys-Jets game, and the Jets have a very good secondary. He ate them alive coming out of the slot. They just didn't do a good job.
Yeah, he's a very good player. Very good player.
So you mentioned this yesterday on the show, and Nick certainly left the door open to it, the possibility of taking one of their safeties and using him as the nickel cornerback. The most logical guy would be Justin Evans. We've never seen him play down there, but he did in his previous life with the Saints before he came here. You'll remember last year, like you said, they didn't go immediately to C.J. Gardner, as their replacement when Avante Maddox was out, dropping him down to the slot. They tried to fix it with a actual cornerback first, but then eventually said, yeah, no, let's give CJ a slide here, because he had done it before in, of all places, New Orleans. Exactly what they're going to ask Evans to do if they do that. If Goodrich comes out and is getting abused in the first half, do you think they make a switch like that in game, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, if it's bad, and you got to adjust and you got to make a change, whether that change would be, Justin Evans moving down, or, maybe Josh Jobe moves inside. I don't think enough people have talked about that, because he's got some, at least from a trait standpoint, should have some versatility. There's certainly got, like, Eli Ricks is long, 6'2", not really, generally long guys like that don't play in the slot. Job's, more compact. So at least on paper, maybe he could be part of the equation. Evans has done it, as you mentioned, from the safety position. And I think it's the comfort level of the guy behind it. And the reason I pay more attention to Evans than, say, Jobe is because, Terrell Edmonds has played a lot of football. Started 5 years on a pretty good defense. So I think there's a comfort level there that maybe allows them to look at that avenue more than the younger players who are unproven for the most part. And the Eagles have shown, unless you're off the charts talented like Jalen Carter, they're going to take things slow with rookies. They've shown that. So maybe they have to eventually throw guys into the deep end of the pool, but it seems like they want to bring them along a little bit more slowly. And right now it looks like they got to throw Goodrich into the deep end of the pool. But if he fails, he fails.
Let me go 2 + 2 = 4. Might be a reach of a 4, but a 4 just the same. If Goodrich struggles and in game they go to Evans and he seems to play significantly better there, either with the naked eye or after they break down film thereafter, and all of a sudden, if you think Evans is going to be good there and you can leave him there for the rest of the year, now you got a bit of a hole at safety. The Buda Baker rumors, are going to start again. They immediately, when he made his unhappiness in Arizona well known during the offseason, rumors started flying in the Eagles. That was one of that. I would suggest that was more than a ... and the Eagles, which anytime there are trade rumors, the Eagles always get involved because that's Howie Roseman. That's his reputation. He's always going to check into everything. And Eagles are an aggressive team. But this one is legit because they could very well have a need at that position. How loud will the drums beat that Buda Baker is coming here to Philadelphia if Evans drops down this week and looks like the number one choice to be the slot corner replacement?
Well, I think you got to wait a little bit because he's on IR now. So, he's at least going to miss 4 games. And we'll see how. So the fact that he's injured, I would curtail the immediacy aspect of it.
Did he play week 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they put him on IR just this week. So he's out for the next 4 games.
So he's out for 4 games no matter what.
Yeah, exactly. So the immediacy is out the window. If you start talking Halloween trade deadline and he's healthy, then it's a more legitimate conversation. Now, they did rework his deal. So they made him happy, at least from a contract standpoint. And the same rules apply that we talked about in the offseason. Look, the player, I'm all for the player, but he makes a lot of money. And he costs significant assets. I mean, the Cardinals aren't going to hand them to you for a couple 6-round picks. I mean, significant assets, plus you got to pay them. I would still say it's a very, very low percentage that's going to happen. And the injury makes it even lesser
Right.
percentage.
If he's going to be out for 4 weeks, if you're going to give up, as you say, the Cardinals' ask number is not probably going to drop because of the number of games that he's going to miss while he's injured. Their ask price is going to be their ask price. And if you're not getting that many games out of him, you're going to be reticent to want to pay the price that the Cardinals are asking. I just wanted to put that out there for conversational purposes. All right. And speaking of the Eagles' busy general manager, Howie Roseman, out there playing those silly roster reindeer games yesterday, too. The Eagles have themselves a new punter. Aaron Sipas released from the practice squad. Braden Mann brought in. We've kicked Mann's name around before because the Eagles previously had claimed him. He was on waivers. When the Jets waived him, the Eagles put in a claim. They didn't get him. The Steelers did. Steelers this offseason decided to go in a different direction after a punting competition in camp. So Mann has been sitting out there for a couple of weeks, and the Eagles make the move for him now. Is it because they decided, well, we got those 2 elevations out of Aaron Sipas, and if we're going to get our punter every single week off the practice squad for 17 weeks this year, at least we got 2 out of Aaron before we kissed him goodbye.
Yeah. I thought they, when I first heard about it, I said, are they going to piecemeal this all season at punter? But then they would have took it 3 weeks for Aaron and then just claimed him. So I do think he's going to be the punter. Now, obviously, he's got 3 weeks to prove. If he punts poorly, they're just going to go to another guy. So, I mean, our long local nightmare, people overstated how bad Aaron Sipas was, certainly bad in the Super Bowl, and that's going to and he wasn't great against Minnesota, but he got bailed out. You remember that early punt. I forget their punt returner. It's not Jalen Reagor. They cut him, but the guy had a nice return, about 20, 25 yards, and Justin Evans bailed him out. Fumble at the end. That was a bad punt. So, he had sort of this extra 3-week tryout, whether you want to call it. He didn't make it 3 weeks. I think the mini buy had something to do with it. And Nick mentioned the operation, the holding part of it. That's what I'm if Jake Elliott starts teetering a little bit, this is gonna turn out to be bad. Their numbers are eerily similar. Mann's a little bit better in gross. We're talking less than 0.5 yards. A little bit better in net, less than 0.5 yards. And he's worse kicking it inside the 20. So it's, he's been a little bit better, depending, probably if open field kicks, a little bit worse with directional kicks. Is it that big of an upgrade to screw around?
Were those his Pittsburgh numbers? Because I remember him when he was a punter of the Jets, and I thought pinning a team inside the 20 was actually a strength for him, that he was better than that than booming a 60-yarder when you needed it.
Well, I think that's his reputation, but I did look up the numbers. I'm trying to pull them up as we speak. And Sipas was better from a percentage standpoint of kicks inside the 20. And it was a slight performance. So he's 32.7% Sipas and Braden's 29.1%. So a little bit better. Are
those career numbers you're giving us? Or just
these are career numbers. Career numbers. The gross is 45.4 for Mann, 44.6, so a little bit more. The net is 39.3 for Mann, 38.7 for Sipas, and the percentage, as I said, inside 20, Sipas has actually been better, 32.7 to 29.1. So right smack dab the same type of numbers. Maybe he's a slight upgrade. And that's why I look at Jake Elliott, man. The guy's been, other than Justin Tucker, you can make an argument that he's been the best kicker in football over the past basically 2 years. We're moving into the second year. He's kicking 61-yarders, 56-yarders, banging it through. You know kickers, Jody. You've been around long enough. Some of them, they get something in their head. It's not even a bad hold. I go back to the preseason. Ty Zettner had one hold here. It was a perfect hold. I looked at it 10 times to make sure. It was a perfect hold in Baltimore. 46-yarder, he missed it. Is that why? I don't know, but he missed it. I'm just throwing it out there.
Where will Mr. Mann and Mr. Elliott be hanging this afternoon so that they can get comfortable with each other? There is a comfort level to it. All right, I will tell you who else is comfortable. That would be the Mac and Mac guys when we get a chance to punch up Mr. Ink-Stained Wretch himself, one of the best Twitter handles I know. Our pal Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer and WIP is going to be jumping in with us next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365, and we've got Marcus Hayes from the Philadelphia Inquirer and WIP to jump in with us and talk some Birds football. Good to see you, Marcus. Thanks for jumping in. I'm really interested to see your take on the Eagles after two games, because we had a bunch of guys on before the season started, and you were one of the guys who raised more questions than most. That the Eagles had questions to answer, even though they were the NFC defending champions. 2 games in, 2 wins, 2 hard-fought games rather than a couple of their NFC counterparts like the 49ers and the Cowboys who have won handily their first 2 games. How have your questions been answered so far in the first 2 Eagle games?
I guess my biggest question was about Nakobe Dean, the middle linebacker, and everything was sort of going to emanate through him, second-year player calling the defensive signals for first-year defensive coordinator Sean Desai. And Nakobe got hurt. So that big question, and it's a big question for me because he's a guy that they want to sign to a second contract, right? And if you can solidify that position with a third-round pick who's going to get a modest second contract down the road, you're in really good shape, especially if it's a position that they don't prioritize or expect to spend a lot of money or a high draft pick on. So that big question has not been answered because Nakobe Dean's out for, what is it, John, 6 weeks at least? So,
yeah, well, at least 4 games. So, you know, but the injury certainly could linger past. I think a lot of people say 4 games. 4 games, he'll be out for 4 games. Not necessarily. He'll be out for at least 4 games. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. I do like your thought of modest because if he plays too well, I've always said the Eagles aren't going to re-sign him to that second deal because they just have proven time and time again, Marcus, they're not going to pay that position. So he almost has to be, to get that second contract in Philadelphia, he almost has to be good, but not too good. And I'm not sure. I think the Eagles get too caught up in that. I really do. If you have a good player, maybe it's not the best position to have a good player, but if you have a good player, accept a good player.
You know, I think they will spend modest money because I don't think linebackers, unless they're sacking the quarterback, make real money anymore. You know, they don't make bank-breaking money much anymore. But the rest of the things that I wanted to see, I wanted to sort of figure out what's going to happen. Cam Jordan has been, you know, and this is dry stuff for your viewership, but Cam Jordan has been spectacular at right guard, especially as a run blocker. He hasn't made a ton of mistakes. He's been able to figure out blitzes. I mean, Jalen Hurts got sacked by Juden in New England because Lane Johnson misread a pass protection, and Cam Jordan didn't. So yeah, that question's been answered. But the biggest question, you know, are they going to be a 15-win team like I thought? Are they going to go 9-0 to begin like I thought? I think so, yes. The biggest issue right now is probably Jalen Hurts and his ability to process and deliver balls to open receivers. He seems a little gun shy right now, a little like, I don't want to make a mistake. And I don't have a problem with that with a guy with a new offensive coordinator. I know he's familiar with Brian Johnson, but it's a new offensive coordinator, and it's a new year. So my contention has always been it's a quarterback's first job to not lose a game, especially if he has a good team around him. And Jalen's done a very good job of that to this point.
Marcus, a lot of people who are singing the tremendously optimistic tune at the beginning of, oh, of course Jalen's going to be great with Brian Johnson. He's known him since he was knee-high to a grasshopper.
What does that mean? What were they talking ball at 4 years old? Was he talking ball? I always kind of snicker at that.
It's a cute story, but it doesn't necessarily tell the story. And I'm with you. It hasn't been this seamless transition from what Shane Steichen used to call. Now, I'll give Minnesota's defense for the last game credit. They said, we're going to dare you to run the football. We're not going to let you to. We're going to drop 9 guys back. We're going to rush 3, maybe even only 2. And the Eagles answered with a power running game, which is exactly what they should have. But Jalen's numbers don't jump off the page to start the season. You truly believe that it's because it's going to take time for he and Brian Johnson to get on the same page?
I don't think it's as much Brian Johnson as it is just Jalen. I mean, Jalen has to he has to find his rhythm. And he's always been that kind of quarterback since we've been around him. He's a guy who is very cautious. He doesn't want to turn the ball over. He knows that he can make plays with his legs that keep the ball more secure. And again, this defense has been a lot better than I thought it was going to be this quickly, especially as far as like making plays and forcing turnovers. So a lot of people don't like the quarterback win set. Okay. I always counter with, okay, what about the quarterback loss stat? Because quarterbacks can lose games by themselves. They can't win them by themselves. Most of them can't. But there is such a thing as a quarterback who loses you games.
Zach Wilson.
Well, or last night, Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun, yeah. He's not been the same. Just hasn't been the same. 2-year layoff, basically.
Yeah, and he's a long, like he was making mistakes that, rookies from small colleges make their first few games. So Jalen's strength is that he wants to win. That's his superpower, and he'll do anything he thinks he needs to do to give them the best chance to win. And that might not make, it might not make AJ Brown super happy. It might not make Dallas Goedert super happy. But if he thinks that the ball security play to play requires X, Y, and Z, he's going to do X, Y, and Z.
Speaking of AJ, I'm going to use the Nick Sirianni scale, and I want you to use it, Marcus. So Nick described it as a 2 out of 10. AJ Brown, the dust up with Jalen Hurts when it comes. And anybody who's been around the NFL for 5 minutes knows great receivers want the football. I thought the bigger issue, Marcus, was the way Nick Sirianni reacted to that after the game, pretending he didn't know what was going on, even though everybody who shops like my wife and Jody's and has Amazon, they saw it. But Nick Sirianni's in the middle. I don't know. And then he finally admits, hey, it's none of your business. To me, it indicated this team's a little bit tightly wound right now. I thought, ironically, Jalen handled it very well. AJ left the locker room, so he didn't handle it well. I assume he will when we get into the locker room on Wednesday or Thursday. I forget what it is on the schedule. But your thoughts, first of all, 2 out of 10, the Sirianni scale. And how do you think the head coach and AJ handled it?
Well, in order, it was a 5 out of 10 because it's not the first time it's happened, and it's never appropriate. It's less appropriate when it's a team leader. And let's be honest, AJ Brown is a team leader.
Yeah.
So if he acts that way, what's to keep Devontae Smith from acting that way, or Dallas Goedert from acting that way, or whoever? But I know Dallas, I know Devontae. I don't expect either of them to act like that, and I do expect AJ to act like that. It's just who he is. Clearly, AJ had a responsibility after a big win in prime time, first on the home opener, to speak to the press after the game, because speaking to the press is speaking to the people. And he didn't, which is disappointing. He's usually very, very responsible that way, but he wasn't this time. Maybe because he felt that he did something wrong and was embarrassed. I don't know. And Nick Sirianni's the same guy who told me, I think it was me, who asked the question when he was hired, that he had not looked at any tape of Carson Wentz before his interview with Jeffrey Lurie. And that's a lie. You know? Nick lies sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, and it's kind of insulting, that he chooses to do that. And it's a flaw, but again, you have to remember too that Nick Sirianni is very much a work in progress. This is his third year as a head coach, and he's a head coach at a place that's hard to be a head coach. So, when those lights come on, even though it's a Zoom call with 40 reporters who are, with their screens blackened because they're, eating cereal or petting their dog or whatever, it's a big stage for him, and he doesn't always make the best decision or the best responses.
Marcus, off the 175 yards that DeAndre Swift put up the other day, does that get him number one back status for the entire year, number one back status for this next game, the first carry of this next game? What did DeAndre Swift give himself as far as strength goes in the Eagles running back room with the performance he had on Thursday night?
I guess he earned the right to be Miles Sanders light, and one of my greatest frustrations in covering the team when Miles Sanders was hurt is that I didn't think Miles Sanders touched the ball enough or was even used as a decoy enough. I didn't think he was included enough, but I'm a big, establish the run guy. I'm not anti-analytics and I'm not anti-passing to win, but defenders will tell you, especially linebackers will tell you, they take it as an affront when you can run the ball on them. And if their first step is sideways or forward, and you're throwing the ball, it's a huge advantage. So I think we're going to see DeAndre Swift elevated past Kenneth Gainwell, but that doesn't mean we're gonna have a bell cow, a workhorse. If somebody gets 14 carries, it's probably going to be DeAndre Swift and not Kenneth Gainwell, which Kenneth Gainwell is what he is, but he's not 14 carries to 1 carry if DeAndre Swift is on your team. And I would wonder if Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson weren't questioned about that usage by Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie after the New England Patriots game, because we know that they meet with Nick Sirianni regularly, and especially right after games. So DeAndre Swift was acquired because he's dynamic, and you have to touch it in order to show that dynamism.
Going back to Brian Johnson, Marcus, he got some boos early on against Minnesota. They were struggling a little bit early. Brian Flores brings some unique looks. I think they were confused a little bit early, but I thought it was nothing but positive. He said, as Jody pointed out, he wasn't coming out of those light boxes. They were trying to limit the passing game, limit Jalen in the running game. And they said, run on us. The Eagles did. I think that's something Shane Steichen would have done. And I like Shane Steichen's play calling. And I like Brian Johnson's play calling because, and Jason Kelsey talked about this after the game, it was probably boring. Inside zone, inside zone, inside zone, inside zone. But if they're not going to stop it, take it. I think that's a positive. Other people are saying you got to throw the ball. You got to have these numbers. Why? If you're successful, they're not stopping it. And we just talked about DeAndre with 175 yards, career high for him. The offensive line was blowing people off the ball. To me, it made perfect sense. Any negatives to it?
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm very critical of Brian Johnson because this is what should have been done from point A. If you're going, it's like a lesson they have to keep learning, and they learn it every few games, where they get away from the run and they give Jalen too much responsibility. In that, it's not just RPOs where he can choose to run, but it's called quarterbacks run. That's what they were booing. They weren't booing drop back passes. They were booing the called quarterback run, the designed run. And I saw too much of it in the first 2 games. I think Jalen's run the ball, 18, 20 times in the first 2 games. That's not sustainable, and it's not wise. He got hurt running the ball last year. He's going to get hurt running the ball this year. You saw some of the shots he took in the first 2 games, and a lot of them were by choice. It was like, here, hit our quarterback. So I didn't like what I saw from Brian Johnson in the first 5 quarters of his tenure as offensive coordinator. And I'm not sure it was his call on the sideline. I talked to Jason Kelsey and I wanted to say Landon Dickerson about, hey, you guys went to the run when between the first and second quarter, because it was the first possession of the second quarter, did you know you were going to the run? And you get that side eye look, like we knew that there was going to be a lot of run calls there from that point forward, which implies to me that the head coach might have, interjected himself and said, what are we doing here? Now, I don't have any proof of that, but there was a philosophical change between the first and second quarter of game 2. The same way there was a philosophical change between games 7 and 8 in 2021 when Nick Sirianni gave up the play calling and gave it to Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen realized, okay, these are the limitations of my offense and especially my quarterback. These are the abilities of my offense and my quarterback. The abilities are my offensive line, which is a fine pass blocking line, is a much better run blocking line. And my quarterback isn't ready to throw the ball 40 times a game. So I think we see a clear line of demarcation in 2021, which I think they're 25-8 since then.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And in 2023, after 5 quarters, somebody said, hey, this is not our identity. We have to revert to our identity even though we have a MVP runner-up quarterback and 3 excellent targets.
Marcus, I want to jump over to the defense side of the ball. You touched on them earlier. You're a little surprised that they've been effective at causing turnovers so far in the first couple of games. 4 sacks. So they're not quite on the pace of 70 last year, but not bad. But they're actually generating as much pressure right up the middle as they are on the edges. The 2 big dogs from Georgia are doing a great job not only playing the run, but collapsing the pocket and getting to the quarterback as well. Can they bank on that all year? Can both of the number 1 draft pick from Georgia the last 2 years play at this level for an entire 17-game season?
I think it depends less on them, Jody, than Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox has been spectacular in the first 2 games. It's his 12th season. He's as effective as he was when he was really good last year. He wasn't really good all of last year, but he was really good a lot last year. And he's playing great. You know, he's probably their most consistent player right now, if Jason Kelce isn't, as far as just being, which is hilarious because I think they're 2 of the 3 oldest players on the team. Jason's 35 and Fletcher's 32. But yeah, he's been really, really good. He's a good mentor, and he still attracts a lot of attention. Most of the times you see Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis get into the backfield or make a stop, you know, or touch somebody behind the line of scrimmage on like a running play, Fletcher is doing the dirty work on the other side still. So, and you know, let's be honest, he's the one who shut down the New England game in the 4th quarter. He made 2 plays in the backfield, and I was like, he's been in there at that point. He'd been in for like 46 plays or 44 plays. Fletcher hasn't played 50 plays more than 5 or 6 times in the last couple of years. And I was like, what is he even doing in there? And he makes 2 huge plays. So yeah, the guys from J&J from Georgia, they're wonderful talents, and they're in a perfect position right now because Fletcher Cox and Milton Williams started the first game. They're both playing well. They're both veterans, and they're the 2 young guys are bigger, stronger, faster, maybe more talented than those 2 guys. But they have a wonderful rotation right now, and it starts with Fletcher.
Yeah, Milton's played well, as you mentioned, Marcus. He's a guy that not a lot of people talk about. And Josh Sweat's having a great start to the season. Hassan Reddick's had some issues. Now, part of it is, you know, Minnesota has a bad offensive line. They don't have a bad right tackle. They have a very good right tackle. So Hassan had tougher duty. But he's dealing with that thumb issue. He had surgery. He's got to play. You know, handwork's important for a pass rusher. Do you think it's that, or do you think it's anything else going on with Hassan Reddick?
Well, he's not getting home from the left side either. They move him around. So he's not getting home from the right side. He's not getting home from the left side. He's not getting home on his stunts. I don't know. You know, maybe it was the lack of training camp. Maybe it's, you know, he doesn't want to get hurt before he signs his extension, if he signs an extension. There are a lot of things at play with Hassan Reddick right now, and he loves to play football, and he really loves playing football in Philadelphia. He's really happy. But I don't know. He just doesn't seem to have the same step that he had before. And again, maybe it's a usage and conditioning issue. Maybe the next game and the next game he'll build. But yeah, it's odd to see against 2 offensive lines that were either undermanned or underexperienced. It's strange to see Hassan Reddick not eating. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Marcus, want to get your take on this 2-part question. First question is easy, multiple choice. Yes or no? Setting the under/over at Braden Mann as the Eagles punter at 3.5 games. You're going under or over? Will he last more than 3 games as the Eagles punter?
I'm going, I don't care. I hadn't heard of Braden. I hadn't heard of Braden Mann before yesterday.
No.
He's a punter. You know, there is a theory that you should never punt. You know, there is a contention that punting.
I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for somebody to pull the trigger on that. Thought it might be Brandon Staley.
I don't want it to ever happen because punt returns are really fun to watch. You know, But yeah, the punters have always been, coincidental to my
All
existence.
right. So then I will never be on the lookout for if this happens, and John has suggested it happened this year early in a game that meant 0 because it was preseason. Jake Elliott, who seems to never missed a kick in preseason, and he did it when Ty Zettner was holding. And was it the fact that he just doesn't have that same karma, that same
kickers
feel?
are strange creatures, Marcus. I'm with you. Punters, who cares? Holders, those kickers, they get real twitchy if anything's different. If Jake Elliott starts to go south, I think that's the only reason this matters. If that and some of these kickers are really teetering on the brink of a mental break.
Well, I think that's nuts. I am not going to be documenting the holder chronicles.
Okay. I was wondering if I had to make
the best
waiting for. Don't have to worry about that in your column, huh, Marcus?
You know who the best holder is I've ever been around? Nope. Doug Peterson.
Doug was good.
Yeah.
Doug was a good
now here's why I covered Blair Walsh, who was an all-pro as a rookie.
How come holders don't get to go to the Pro Bowl?
No, he was the kicker.
No, how come holders don't get to
go to the Pro Bowl?
They should. Well,
you're right, Marcus. Damn straight.
Yeah, long snappers. You're right. He was an all-pro though as a rookie. They changed his holder. He was a disaster. I've never. Now that's an extreme example. It doesn't happen to that degree, but kickers are very sensitive creatures at times. I don't get that feeling from Jake Elliott, but I do think it's worth saying, worth mentioning. Just something to keep an eye on as they move forward. But you
think they go back and they think they go re-sign Aaron Sipos?
No.
I think he can hold for Jake.
Yeah, here's a legitimate. Hold on, timeout, Philadelphia. Here's a legitimate question for you two very knowledgeable football guys.
Who is the holder now?
Well, we believe it'll be Braden Mann, the new punter that they signed.
Well, why wouldn't it be like the backup quarterback?
They don't do that anymore because it's interesting. Bill
Belichick.
Belichick.
It would be great if Marcus Mariota, after all the Heisman hype, and the high draft pick, became the holder.
Yeah, Bill. It used to be back then. Maybe a backup quarterback was a holder.
Yeah.
Sometimes a wide. They do all different things. Bill Belichick did every once in a while. You've probably seen it, Marcus. Bill will, if you talk about anything, but if you talk about the history of the game, he might go on a dissertation. He went off about the history of special teams, kickers, holders, punters for 20 minutes, talking about how it's changed. It was great. One of the issues was holders, and he mentioned that. Can't do it anymore. Those guys all work together. You have limited preparation time, so they can sit off on the other fields, whereas you need your backup quarterback and all that stuff. And back in the old days, you'd spend 2 minutes. All right, go practice a hold. Now it's much more structured.
Practice time is
but there's no reason for that. Like they have you know what I'm saying? I mean, why can't they practice holding with the backup quarterback? If the play blows up, he gets up and he throws pass.
Well, they could.
I know you've noticed this. The Eagles don't practice much.
Yeah,
the league only allows them so much practice time, and the Eagles do even less because God forbid somebody get hurt. So
use the extra. Use the extra for the holding practice. Nick could be 20 minutes late for his press conference.
Yeah, if he did that though, Howie might come down and go, they could get hurt practicing the snap. You really want to put them at risk?
That's right. We have data on that.
They probably do. You kid when you say that, but I can almost guarantee you somewhere in their files they've got data on injuries holding for kicking. That is just.
How come the punters? Is it worse to lose your backup quarterback in a game or your punter?
Well, if your starting quarterback isn't healthy,
you lose your punter,
it's not an issue. If you lose your punter, yeah. I mean, generally kickers can punt a little bit and they can get you through the game. So if Braden Mann were to get injured,
don't they have the third quarterback now though?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
they do. Which is interesting because certain teams don't even use it, and that makes no sense to me. But yeah,
we
now they
digress.
have the.
There has to be something.
No,
more
I can
important.
tell you why they don't use it, because they don't want to give up a 53-man roster spot. The Eagles are uber protective of all three of their 53-man roster spot. That's why they're elevating a punter every single week, because those 53-man spots are like gold in some teams.
Well, it's not about the 53. It's about the game day roster.
So
and they're
John,
giving you an extra player.
No, but you have to be on the 53 to get that extra spot.
Yeah. But some teams with third quarterbacks, sorry, Marcus, aren't using that third quarterback because it makes no sense.
With 3 quarters on the 53 man.
Yes.
So, John, how many times can you be promoted from the practice squad?
3.
All right. So I would take the under, Jody.
So you think they're just going to rotate them in and out?
We're going to have.
It could be the first team.
We're going to have 7
Thank you for
punters
reminding
this
me,
year.
Marcus. I completely forgot. I was in the middle of a question and we got off on a tangent. I don't know the answer to this. I hope one of you two guys do.
They'll have 7 punters this year.
If Aaron Sipas got released yesterday, so
that'd be
not
great.
there, he can sign on with any other team's practice squad, kick new kicker for the Eagles for the next, as Marcus and I suggest, 2 or 3 weeks, and then they go through the process again. If you re-sign Sipas, does that restart the elevation from the practice squad clock, or does the 2 times he's already done it count?
No, it doesn't restart for the Eagles.
Right.
It restarts.
You sure?
Yeah. Positive.
Well, then Sipas isn't coming back.
No,
He come back once.
He come back for
one game. Yeah. At Inkstained Wretch, follow Marcus on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, inquirer.com. Make sure you read him there. Sports Radio WIP. You can listen to him there, and we always love it when he stops by with us.
Is that it?
Well, no, last one for me. Jody's going to get the last one.
One last question each.
Yeah. What we haven't talked about, we got too mucked up. I'll take the blame for that with the punter conversation, but
older conversation.
Yeah, older conversation. Nickel corner. I mean, look, this team was healthy last year. Now, ironically, Avonte Maddox was one of the guys who was a little bit banged up, missed 9 games, but he was back for the NFC Championship game, the Super Bowl, although playing through an injury. Now, most likely done for the season, Marcus. They lost Zach McPherson in the preseason. Everybody forgets about that. He was going to be the backup nickel this year. Now you're down to Mario Goodrich. Now, Nick Sirianni said he likes his in-house options. Well, we started this conversation with Nick being less than honest. We'll end it. Any honesty to that at all, that he's happy with his in-house options right now?
Well,
slot cornerback.
The thing that intrigues me on a couple different levels is that James Bradbury practiced at slot a little bit during preseason, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he did.
So that intrigues me because, number one, you'd be saying that position in certain alignments is as important or more important than the outside spot, because James Bradbury is making a lot of money to play nickel.
Yeah.
Number two, James Bradbury, to me, looks worst on the interior. When he has to deal with the player cutting in versus cutting out, he seems a little bit less comfortable, a little bit less aggressive. So maybe he's not the best option. So I wouldn't be surprised, assuming he comes back from his concussion on Monday night, to see him there a few times. And I think Josh Dobe would be on the outside, Jody, John, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe that's what he's talking about, that he has these pieces, but they might not be deployed in the in their normal roles. But yeah, it's kind of the talk of training camp was, look at the depth they have at cornerback early in training camp, and now with 3 guys, 1 guy dinged up and 2 guys hurt, it doesn't seem to be quite as deep, and we're worrying about whether they're viable at that position with the personnel they currently have. But you'll see how good a job they actually did in scouting lesser known cornerbacks, and how good Sean Desai is at deploying them. It's a big, this is a really fascinating time for the defensive coordinator, because he's got a safety who's hurt. He's got a nickel corner who's hurt. He's got a cornerback who's hurt, but the defense is playing great anyway. to this point against, Mac Jones and, lesser passers. And they're not going to, they got Baker Mayfield next. And I know he had a great game this Sunday, but Baker Mayfield is Baker Mayfield. So it's going to be an interesting first 3 weeks because we don't know where they're going to be injury-wise next week. We don't know how they're going to perform in Tampa on Monday night with Baker Mayfield coming off, a validation game. So, yeah, the biggest question I think all of us had, because there's a little continuity in the offense if Brian Johnson becomes the offensive coordinator, there's no continuity on the defense. Fletcher Cox is coming back. Brandon Graham is coming back. They're a million years old. Reed Blankenship, who was afterthought this time last year, is the safety that you're depending on. And, you have a middle linebacker in Nakobe Dean who's never really played. So all of those questions some have been answered, some are now amplified. And you wonder how offensive coordinators are going to attack this defense and whether Sean Desai is going to be able to get his players in the right positions and playing fast enough to counter that.
Marcus, my last question is, again, another two-parter. Easy first one, multiple choice, and then give me a little bit more on the second end. Through 2 weeks of the National Football League season, how many teams are 2-0?
It's a quiz?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. 4?
No. 9. 9
Okay.
to 2-0, which you think, all right, first week 32, 50-50, cuts down to 16. Next week, 50-50, cuts down to 8. They're actually 9, so it's not that far off what the usual numbers would say. The analysis the Eagles would get out of their
I thought it was a trick question.
No, it wasn't.
Be like, there's
But
an anomaly.
here's the follow-up question that I want you to answer. Of the 9, how many do you think are in the NFC?
I don't know. 7?
7 out of the 9. And
See, that
all
was the
John
trick
and I have
part.
been saying all offseason is, the AFC is so much better than the NFC. It's really top heavy. They got 9 undefeated teams in the 7 undefeated teams in the NFC and only 2 in the AFC.
Well, I don't want to let people in on behind the curtain because they might not listen to us, Jody. But let's be honest. If Aaron Rodgers wasn't hurt, the Jets would be really good. Last night, you see Cleveland.
Jets could be 1-1. If Aaron Rodgers, we're just talking about.
Well, they could be.
If Aaron Rodgers didn't get hurt, there's a good chance the Jets are 1-1.
All I'm trying to say, this league's about attrition. You see Nick Chubb last night, horrible injury. I mean, that completely changes things for Cleveland, which I thought was going to be a team better than most people expected. This league's about injuries, man. And, we do the best we can when we try to pick these games. But I constantly say, tell me who's healthy. When people say play the win and loss game, Marcus, whenever the Eagles are playing the Cowboys, who's healthy? That'll tell you who I'm going to pick in that particular game. Both good teams, obviously, but Dallas looks like world beaters right now. Take Micah Parsons off that team, you take Tony Pollard off that team, all of a sudden shifts things dramatically. It's not a cop-out, but health means so much in the NFL, and the Eagles were extremely healthy. And Howie Roseman even said this a couple times in the offseason, Marcus.
Mm-hmm.
We probably can't count on being that healthy again. He was preparing people. And it's, Avante's a big injury, not as big as some of the other injuries, but Nakobe Dean, as you mentioned, already out. It's already more attrition this year than last year, at least early. It's not been devastating, but it could be a troubling trend, to say the least.
Well, I will say when Landon Dickerson hurt his left or right knee on a tush-push play in New England. No, a tush-push play in against who'd they play second on Thursday night? Who'd they just
Minnesota.
beat? Against Minnesota. And he was fine. And Fletcher Cox hurt his ribs, I think, in the opener. He was fine.
Yeah.
But to your point, if either of those injuries is more significant, they're a much diminished team. The 7 NFC team. I'm surprised, I guess. But your argument is a double-edged sword, John. Right? the NFC stinks. Okay. The teams
On
that
paper
are
it does.
On
well,
paper
the
they
teams
do,
that are,
but in the standings right now, they're dominant over the AFC.
right, but they're not dominant because they beat good teams. They're dominant
Yeah.
because they beat bad teams.
Exactly.
You have mediocre teams beating bad teams. If we were talking about 3-0 or 4-0, it'd be one thing. But we're talking about, the Washington Commanders and the New Orleans Saints. So
Tampa Bay comes in 2-0. They beat Minnesota. Now that, most people probably think they lose that game. It was on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Then they beat Chicago, who's a terrible team. So it's not like they've been world beaters, but they're 2-0.
Yeah.
I don't think
somebody's got to win them. Somebody's got to win. It's like the when a player goes to a basketball player goes to a mediocre team, somebody's got to get the points and the rebounds.
Yeah,
The player's
I say that all the time, Marcus. Jody hears me. 20-point scorer on a bad NBA team.
Somebody's got to shoot.
And I can give you one. His name's Kelly Oubre, and now he's a 76er. They signed him last night.
We go.
20 points on the Charlotte Hornets last year.
He ain't getting 20. He ain't getting 20. He ain't getting 10 shots on this team.
Not on this team.
Me?
You are exactly right about that.
I think the best example I can remember is I think his name is Nikola Vucevic. He was a Sixer for a while.
Oh yeah, I love Nick. I love Nick.
And he's a wonderful backup 4-5 who's been starting for years. I think he was got all-star votes.
He was an all-star, yeah.
But I mean, it's not laughable because he's played to his capacity, but he's the perfect example of somebody's got to get those rebounds and somebody's got to take those shots.
Marcus, we always love when you come on with us. Thank you very much for doing so today. We'll get you back up again in a couple of weeks. Enjoy, brother.
All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks,
Marcus Days, Philadelphia Inquirer and WIP. You can catch him hosting shows there as well. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. We're going to get Kevin Kincaid from Carson brought up in about 18 minutes. All right, you want to stay put. Don't go anywhere. Because when I come back, I will annoy every single Eagle fan that is listening to us right now.
I like this. I like it.
Two words,
John. And I like it.
2 words. Power Index.
Oh boy.
The power in the
ESPN Football Power Index is back. I didn't even notice.
Is back.
All right.
And Eagle fans will not be happy. I can guarantee you that. MAGA Mac guys coming back here on Birds 365 next.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
You got Mac and Mac here with you on Birds 365. I'm going to get the ESPN Power Index in a second, but first on the question I asked Marcus Hayes, I'll spin off it and ask John McMullen this. NFL intra-conference. It's intra, right? You're a righty. You know these things. If you're going between one and another, it's intra. If it's within your own conference, it's inter, right?
No, inter is out. Intra
Right,
is in.
That's why I asked you, because I knew I'd screw it up. So there have been 6 inter-conference games so far between the AFC and the NFC. What do you think the record is?
6-0.
No, but you're close.
5-1.
5-1, and you should know who the one is. Who's the one? What's the name of this show?
Birds 365. Yeah, but the Eagles won. The Eagles
Right, they're
beat
the
them.
only NFC team to win.
Oh, I thought it was the
AFC
opposite.
is 5-1.
I see. Really?
5-1 in the 6th intra.
I assume because everybody was 2-0 in the NFC, but they're all playing each other. Yeah. The AFC is still better. I think that's going to unveil itself as the season goes on, to put it mildly. Kansas City's a good team. They lost. Buffalo's a good team. They lost. Baltimore's pretty good team. They're undefeated though, right? Miami looks good. They're 2-0.
John, I have to apologize. I was wrong. It's not 5-1. It is 6-0. The NFC has won every single
Yeah,
game.
I thought. Yeah.
Cowboys beat the Jets.
Yeah.
The Commanders beat the Broncos. The Sam Howell game. The Lions beat the Chiefs opening night. The 49ers beat the Steelers. The Saints beat the Titans, and the Eagles beat the Patriots. I was thinking the Patriots won.
Well, we know why the Lions won opening night. What was that second game? Give me that second game.
Second game was Commanders beat the Ravens.
Yeah, that was a hokey game. So right there's 2. You say it's not that
49ers over the Saints. 49ers give me over the Steelers. Saints beat the Titans, and Eagles and Patriots. The NFC, which we said all off season,
dominating,
just not as good as the NFC. The AFC just so much better. 6-0 out of the gate. The NFC in the intra-conference games.
I'm trying to. You're going to do the football power index. I'm going to do who Pro Football Focus says are the best teams.
I kind of trust them above the
football power index. All right, of the top 10 teams, you have, let's see, 2-2, 3-3, 4-3, 5-3, 5-4, 5-5, 5-5.
Out of the top 10?
Yeah.
Even though on the field, just in the games between the two conferences, it's been lopsided to the NFC. All right. The NFL Football Power Index, for those who didn't see us debating this last year and screaming and yelling about it, any media outlet worth its salt has its own power ratings. Johnny Sports Illustrated, CBS, ESPN, NBC, anybody who does any kind of significant NFL talk, writing, television, you got to have a power. You have to have power ratings. It's
And
a
they're all
given.
meaningless, by the way.
They
But
are.
yes, we all have them.
Absolutely meaningless, but yet everybody does them. And ESPN has their own power ratings where they poll their best football insiders.
I don't even. Do you know how they do it? I don't know how. I thought it was more of an analytical thing.
No.
But I don't know.
ESPN has two different power ratings.
Oh.
They have their quote unquote power ratings, which is a compilation of a bunch of guys that cover the NFL for them, and they take their votes and they add them all up and they go from there.
The FPI, though, is the analytics one.
Correct.
Right?
The FPI is the Football Power Index, which they say they put statistics into a computer and play game simulations 10,000 times to justify how their statistics work. Well, here is the new power index after week 2 of the National Football League. The number 1 team is the Dallas Cowboys. They are the top.
They're always number 1, but this time they should be number 1.
Here's where you're wrong, John. You know what number they were last week? They did it after the first week. They do it every week. They have the rank after 1, and then it changes every single week. You know what number the Cowboys were last week?
I do not.
They were 10th.
10th?
Because they beat up on Zach Wilson, the Cowboys jumped from number 10 to number 1. They were.
Is that more disrespect to Daniel Jones and the Giants than what? How could they be number 10? They were the most impressive
last
team
week, and they jumped to number 1.
I don't get this thing.
Here's another one you're not going to get. Number 2 is the Buffalo Bills.
No,
Before the season started, the Buffalo Bills were number 2. When they lost their opener to the Jets without Aaron Rodgers, they stayed at number 2. And this week, they go out and win by 20 some odd points, blow out the Raiders, and they're still number 2. They haven't moved. They've been 2 all along, and for whatever reason, after they put all their stats into their computers, the Buffalo Bills are still number 2. The Kansas City Chiefs were number 1, dropped to number 2 off a win. They didn't drop off losing the first game. They were number 1 to start. They stayed at number 1. They win this week, and they drop down to number 3. Again, how did they do this? It doesn't make any sense. The San Francisco 49ers were number 1, 2, 3, 4. They were number 5. They moved up 1 to number 4. The Miami Dolphins were number 6. They moved up to number 5. The Baltimore Ravens were number 8. They moved up to number 6. And coming down 3 slots from number 4 down to number 7 after beating up the Minnesota Vikings, your Philadelphia Eagles went from they were number 4 now down to number 7 off a win against the Vikings. I guess they didn't like DeAndre Swift's 175 yards, John. Because they dropped 3 slots in the computer rankings.
Now, to be fair, I have no idea. I'm assuming it's stats related, and they gave up a ton of yardage, a ton of garbage time touchdowns. You know, it was what the game was. They were up 20, and they only won by 6. They gave up a lot of classic Kirk Cousins garbage time yards. And he threw for 364 and 4 touchdowns. So you put that in the computer, and this is why analytics sucks. You put that in the computer and it just comes out, oh, they're giving up yardage again. And you got to look at the context of games. I can't get worried about stuff like that. And after 2 weeks, it's a small sample size. So you see these, it will start to adjust itself as you go through. But yeah, I mean, Buffalo obviously starts at a higher spot. Kansas City starts at a higher spot. Like, they disrespected Miami, and Miami's been great through the first. Do I think they're one of the 2 best teams? I think Dallas and Miami have looked the best. I'd probably put Dallas 1, Miami 2.
San Francisco's look pretty good.
San Francisco probably be 3 in my mind. But Dallas, Miami would be 1, 2. I don't think Miami's going to be 2. I think Dallas has a really good team, but I think Miami's played really well early. Do I think it's going to continue? Probably not. But if you're doing these goofy power rankings, the Eagles haven't been impressive. We talk all about style points. They get no style points, but that doesn't matter. It's not a bunch of idiots in a boardroom like college football, or I can get Kevin Kincaid to say who's the best team, and you got to get me style points. Eagles haven't had any style points over the first 2 weeks, by and large.
And do you know who the Eagles are just in front of at number? The Eagles are 7. Who's at number 8? The Los Angeles Chargers, who are 0-2. Talk about no style points. They don't have a win. And more important than style, they don't have style points, and they don't have a W.
But
they
got a lot of numbers.
On the reputation of Justin Herbert. They lose this week, they can be 0-3, and they give you all these numbers.
Well, the good news is they're playing Minnesota, so they're probably going to win. But, those are both teams that put up big numbers and find ways to lose games. So it's going to be an interesting matchup.
And
somebody's got to win.
One of them's going 0-3, and they both made the playoffs last year. You go to 0-3. There's the whole only 10% of the teams that make it starting 0-2. You go in 0-3, that number drops precipitously thereafter, which means one of those two teams is probably dead in the water coming up this week. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. We are Mac and Birds 365. We see that we have Kevin Kincaid already in the green room, ready to rock and roll. He of Crossing Broad is going to jump on with us next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
At Pond Lehocky, we've recovered billions of dollars for our clients, and we're confident we can do the same for you. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured clients obtain some of the largest settlements in Pennsylvania. One conversation is all it takes to help you and your family get back on track. If you've been injured in an accident, give Pond Lehocky a call.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Staffing is not easy, but that's what we do every day, all day. The key to our success is storytelling, asking the right questions to find the right people. Hi, I'm Gary Kane, president of Kane Partners. We want to be your staffing partner.
Since 1977, it's always been about you, the community, at Rafferty Subaru. And through the Subaru Love Promise, we prove we care by supporting charities like So Good Now.
So Good Now helps kids in under-resourced areas by connecting them with student athletes to serve as mentors. We remove barriers so athletes can help youth in the corners of our communities where light and love are needed most.
When you choose Rafferty Subaru, you help organizations like So Good Now.
It's all about you at Rafferty Subaru.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365 to Mac and Mac. We're lucky enough to get Kevin Kincaid, lead writer and editor of Crossing Broad, who every morning when I get up, Birds 365, I go to my Eagles websites, Bleeding Green Nation, Eagles Wire, Inside the Eagles. Oh, I got to go to Crossing Broad too, even though it isn't an Eagles-centric website, just in case in case Kincaid's got an opinion on the Philadelphia Eagles, he's here to share them with us for the next 15, 20, 25 minutes. KK, how'd your summer go? Been a minute since we had you on.
Yeah, no, it was good. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry if I sound or look haggard. Both of my kids are back at preschool now.
Uh-oh.
So we got the
got some germs. I hear some yeah.
Yeah, we got the preschool funk going around already. It's not even, it's like a germ factory in there, man. You know, geez.
I like it. You're pushing through, though, man.
God,
that
my mom
shows
was
a lot.
No, real quick, my mom was a teacher, and she would always say that she never got sick because she had like super immunity.
Yeah.
Pulled up from being around like the 8th graders all the time. So I always used to think that was like fake, but now I understand. It's very
but she didn't pass that DNA on to you. What's wrong with you, Mom? You gotta give that to KK.
I know it's nature versus nurture. I could have used some of that. You know,
you could use that. Yeah, teachers created that. I don't want to give them a free plug. What is that? Those orange sort of tabs. I buy into that. The vitamin C.
Oh, like the emergency.
Yeah, whatever. The hell.
Take your emergency and your daily vitamins. And then your 2-year-old giving you like the plague from Chesterbrook Academy. You'll find a way to survive. You know. So.
All right, here's a football related question, not Eagles related, football related, but it's right up your alley. The kind of stuff you guys put out there on Crossing Broad. I had a call on WIP last night. Who shamed the announcers, and I tried to explain it to him. It has nothing to do with the announcers, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. But then he shifted his blame to Disney because they were the ones broadcasting it. Shamed them for not showing a replay of Nick Chubb's injury. He said, I should have the chance to see it if I want, and they should give me a heads up if I want to turn away because of the grotesque aspect of the injury, that ESPN made a judgment call, an editorial call, to not show the replay. And I had no problems with it because if you want to see it, they have this great thing called the internet. You can go find it in about 20 seconds. If you need to see it again and again and again and again, because that's your bent, okay, fine. What would be the Crossing Broad stance on that? Should ESPN have showed a replay of the injury of Nick Chubb's leg going in a direction it's not physically meant to go?
Well, you used the term in the question. You said judgment call. That's all these are. I mean, there's no playbook for what a broadcaster is supposed to do in those kinds of situations, you know? I think if you're going to do something like that, you could certainly justify it by saying, hey, we want to give you a warning here. You know, we're going to replay it. And, you know, if you don't want to, if you're squeamish, look away, or, you know, give a disclaimer of sorts, and you can say, hey, this is pretty graphic, you know, if you want to look away, and you could do it that way. But I think they just err on the side of caution, you know, and like try to take the safest route. That's what we did at Channel 3, man. I mean, like, we would just take the safest route and be like, you know, if you think you're gonna upset somebody or offend somebody, don't do it. I think at Crossing Broad, we probably would have showed it. You know, because it's a different brand, it's a different type of approach. But I think
I love the entitlement from Jody's caller. That's
what he said. He said he was being lectured by Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, which I tried to explain to him. Listen, they're not making the call. Someone in a truck somewhere is on the phone with a major Disney executive who's making that call. It's not Joe Buck and Troy Aikman going, I'm dictating that we're not going to show you the play.
Yeah.
The guy came off as
really a comes from way up. I mean, because they have a director who sits in the truck, and the director is the one who brings up the cameras and pushes the button. But it's a producer who's sitting behind him who does the editorial judgment call and says, hey, I think we should stay away from doing that. Yeah, there's no right or wrong. There's no playbook for that. I mean, in journalism school, they don't teach you that one way or another. You pay all this money to sit there in class, and then they say, well, it could be this or it could be that, you know? So it's like, everything's an individual. I think if you just give them if you give them the disclaimer, you're fine, though. I mean, I think that's what you have to pair it with.
Now you mentioned you're fighting something, the super bug going through the preschool. Now, are you fighting through this no style points from the Eagles, Kevin Kincaid, through 2 weeks? I mean, that's tough to take. No style.
Yeah. Well, I mean, style points don't mean much after 2 weeks. They mean more at the end of the season, I guess, you know. But again, this is not This is not Penn State, scoring in the final seconds against my guys, to win 38-13 instead of 31-13. I mean, it's more. I think like wins are wins in the NFL. I think style points are much more of a college football kind of thing. I think the biggest takeaway from that game on Thursday night was that the defense.
And by the way, they're valuable in college football because you have to impress people. You got to impress people in the boardroom.
Because there's an arbitrary nature to all of the playoff stuff. I mean, like you're fighting, you have to put your resume up against other people's resume. In the NFL, you get into the playoffs, Yeah. So the win-loss is the only thing that matters. But my biggest takeaway from the other night was just, the defense gives them a certain thing. So you say, all right, we're going to take it and we're going to run the ball down your throat. And I think people are trying to get a grip of, trying to parse, these two ideas and put them together as, hey, the passing game doesn't look like it should right now, but also they gave you the running game. So you just, force the ball down the middle. And that's just, see, I think it's smart because it's like, you just take what you're given, man. That's Captain Obvious.
Yeah, I liked it. I said, Brian, I give Brian Johnson a lot of credit. He's like, all right, you're going to play like boxes, inside zone. They never stop it. I'm going to keep running it.
Yeah.
I think it's smart, but a lot of people want that yardage. And I said, look at the other side. Kirk Cousins ends up with 364 and 4 touchdowns, I think, was the final numbers.
In a loss.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah. But it's funny, John, is like, isn't this a running the football town?
It typically until
So they ran the ball. They ran for 200 some yards. Now we want them to throw.
Man, they want it all, Kevin.
They do. I mean, and that's important. Yeah, we want a sack on every play, and we want to run the ball down their throat. But I'll give you a statistic that'll help assuage people. Perhaps there are only 4 running backs in the NFL that have at least 15 carries and a YPC number of 6. They are DeAndre Swift, who only got 1 carry in the first game.
Right.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, and Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
That's pretty good company.
And by the way, if you get Boston Scott up to that number, he'd be over that because I think he averaged 8 yards a carry before he got his concussion.
If he was if he could qualify for it. So that's funny, because you talk about the Eagles fans who loved Buddy Ryan and the 46 defense and all that stuff. They are always yelling for Andy Reid to run the ball.
Oh yeah.
Now they're running the ball now, but now we're concerned about the passing game. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that the quote unquote Eagle fan, and again speaking very broad brush stroke and generality, has come along with the times on offense. In defense, they're still mired in the past. It's got to be all about aggression and blitzing and for some reason the offensive gurus in this town have moved more quickly than defensive one has. You talked about the running game. Are we destined to see DeAndre Swift go down with an injury this week? Because Nick Chubb, ugly leg, bent, done, season over.
Yeah.
Barkley sprain, significant ankle sprain, might be high. They haven't determined yet. Going to miss week. Austin Eckler, time frame to return. Nobody knows anything. All those guys who are fighting to get paid this offseason, they're all hurt already. Is DeAndre Swift, who's going to be a free agent at the end of the season, by the way, is he destined to get hurt this week? Am I now putting the kibosh on his season by mentioning the fact that it's trending to every single running back of consequence going down with an injury?
Well, that's a very gloomy and negative question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
somebody's got to do it. Might as well be me, not you.
Whoa.
Kincaid, nobody ever complains about you for that. So I'll take the hit on that one. He's going down, and he's going down hard.
If I was Nostradamus, I could give you an answer, but I think if we're playing the numbers game, like surely we've got all our running back injuries out of the way now, right? I mean, can it happen again?
Very good.
It can't happen again.
By UKK. I like it.
But doesn't this kind of prove I hate the fact that I'm even saying this, but doesn't this kind of help the idea of not paying running backs? Not giving them these big contracts and whatnot. I hate that because these guys deserve to be paid and they put their bodies on the line, but you pay a guy and then he goes down injured. It's like, look at all the Saquon stuff. I mean, the Saquon stuff is a perfect case study for, paying running backs or not paying running backs, and injury proneness is not a word, or maybe it is, but how injury.
Why not?
Okay. Well,
we're just all the time.
making up words on here. But yeah, just I don't know. It's like I mean, look at like Rashad Penny too. I mean, the only reason he gets in is because the Eagles go down 2 running backs and in 2 weeks. I mean, maybe that's saying like, hey, you should have a committee thing. You should do like the 3-headed monster, the 4-headed monster, if we're considering Jalen Hurts a one head of the Hydra, So fascinating like stuff to help back up these larger discussions we have about whether you should pay running backs and how much value there is in the position.
I'm not going to go down the dark route, Kevin, of Jody projecting injuries. I'm going to talk about injuries that have happened with Avonte Maddox. Now, now Nick Sirianni said, I'm comfortable with in-house options. Well, it just came over when you were talking. Jordan Schultz, give him the credit. The Eagles are looking at William Jackson today, the former first-round pick corner who can play in the slot. Two things. One, how concerned are you with the slot corner position, because they also lost Zach McPherson?
Yeah.
And what's up with Nick Sirianni blatantly just lying left and right, whether it's dust-ups on the sideline? Is he going to corral that a little bit? Or I'm happy with the in-house option. William Jackson shows up tomorrow. Or is Howie just not letting him in? Where's the Kevin Kincaid thought process?
I think Sirianni has reached like year 3 of the NFL where he just doesn't really care anymore. Like he's just going to say whatever he wants to say and just get through the press conferences and show a little bit more anger and emotion. Maybe it's a little bit of the Italian coming out in him. I feel like I can say that because I'm Italian.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But here's an interesting question. Is it do you lose it's say like people talking about like put James Bradbury in the slot, right? This hypothetical, right? Do you gain of moving him inside? Is that worth the loss of taking him off the outside?
He's an all-pro outside corner.
Right.
It's absurd to me to even think about it.
So you go next man up. I have PTSD from the Josiah Scott thing last year, and like Avonte Maddox going out at the Cowboys game, which by the way, I think they would have won if he had stayed on the field. I don't know if that's a hot take, but he was playing really, really well in that.
Yeah, he was playing really well in that game.
And I just, again, you're weighing the risk reward of like, I don't like moving guys out of their best positions just to cover somewhere else. So if you don't like what you have there, sign somebody. I got no problem with that. I mean, that's pretty critical because they haven't named one guy besides Avonte Maddox that the Eagles have had since Patrick Robinson, who's been a good slot defender.
Yeah, it would be Patrick. Patrick had that great season after the worst training camp I've ever seen. It was the weirdest turnaround.
So in the last 6 years, they've had 2 good slot corners.
Yeah. But Avonte's been around. He just gets hurt every year. Right. But when he's out there, very good. Very good slot corner.
Does put them in a precarious position. And I think the reason why Howie will look outside is he's done for the year. And Nick wouldn't say that yesterday, but everyone knows if you have pec surgery, you're done for 6 months. So it's going to take him out for the year. If it was just another couple of weeks or to be determined, he'd be elevating guys from the practice squad, playing the practice squad game of elevating guys X amount of times before you have to release them. I don't know, like Mr. Cepas. We hardly knew ye, and he's gone, and he's done. Johnny Mac brought it up again today, and it's legit. He seemed to have this very good symbiotic relationship with Jake Elliott as his holder. And Elliott has been arguably the best kicker in the NFL, not named the guy from Baltimore. Why am I
Tucker?
Just phenomenal all time, maybe the greatest kicker of all time. Jake Elliott, number 2 in the league. We gonna miss Aaron Cepas and his holding ability? Is that what it's come to, Kevin Kincaid?
God, I've never heard that before. Are there any?
You gotta listen to John McMullen on Birds 365 more often.
We got 2 hours every day, Kevin. We got to get down.
You get deep into the deep. Well, I know you love analytics. Do you have any advanced analytics to back up his holding capability?
No, I just covered Blair Walsh. I tell the story all the time, and he was an all-pro kicker as a rookie. All-pro. He was the best kicker in the NFL. And they changed his holder the next year. He was never the same. Never the same. So it's, it's a small sample size.
There's an old saying in sports that works for any sport. where if you don't talk about a guy, then that means he's doing a good job. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, when's the last time anybody said anything about Rick Lovato?
Nope. Only time you talk about the long snapper is a bad snap.
Is if they
I
mess
never,
up.
ever even notice them, talk about them, anything.
So so here's the answer. Do they carry 2 punters on the roster?
No
One
shot.
just a hold.
No.
And
Those
one just
53-man spots on the Eagles, the roster spots, way too valuable.
Well, and it's not even about the holder, because I've told it. Jake Elliott missed 1 kick in the preseason in Baltimore, 46-yarder. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't difficult for him. Ty Zettner was holding. I looked at that damn thing 10 times, Kevin. It's perfect hold. Perfect hold. You just missed it. Kickers are strange creatures. They get in their heads. You see it all over the league. It's like golfers who lose their swing.
It's mental.
Yeah, it's a mental thing.
Everybody's got all the physical tools. I mean, let's not act like every kicker now can bang one in from 60 yards. Right? If
it's kind of amazing how
if the conditions are right. Yeah, of course. I thought it was funny too how in New England, like, he misses the extra point. I think it was still rainy in the first half, or whatever. That cleared up a little in the second half. But as he got progressively further and further back, they became easier. So it's like stop thinking about it and single doink the one and then hit from 56 or whatever. Does Jake Elliott? Do you think people do you think that Eagles fans realize how good they have it with Jake Elliott?
No, I think they absolutely take him for granted.
Yeah,
that he is as good as he is, and it's just like, oh, it's Jake. Of course, he's going to make this 58-yard field goal.
61. I mean,
61.
61.
Because we've been blessed with good. I mean, outside of those 2 or 3 years of whatever of Cody Parkey and Alex Henry and Caleb Sturgis. Their bookend. The last 20 years are bookended by Jake Elliott and David Akers. So I mean, Philly fans have seen a lot of crap over the last 20 years, but the kicking has not necessarily been one of those things.
We may get into the weeds on a daily basis here on Birds 365, but that's the first time in a year that Caleb Sturgis's name has been brought up.
There you go. Yeah.
We appreciate you for adding it, for joining us in the weeds,
Nice.
Kevin Kike.
It was the
Thank you
Caleb Sturgis injury that got Jake Elliott here. They signed Jake Elliott off the Bengals practice squad. The Bengals actually drafted Jake Elliott, and
He was a draft pick?
Yeah, and he lost out to Randy Bullock. Big mistake by Cincinnati.
See, this is good kicker knowledge out of John.
good
McMullen. You don't get this kind of
Yeah.
kicker knowledge anywhere else.
I'd forgotten Caleb Sturgis existed, that he ever lived. So
Yeah.
I'm learning a ton here on Birds 360.
Can I say something? Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure. Yeah, knock yourself out.
It's fascinating to me because I watch. My team's a Big 12 team, but even before we joined the Big 12, when we were playing in the Big East, we ran some version of that, like 3-3-5 like stack, where you had like the hybrid safety linebacker or whatever, and they kind of show different looks. The Vikings rushed 3.
I love Brian Flores. I love the guy.
Yeah, and it was just like, it was funny to me because I'm laughing because I know that Jalen saw a ton of that in his year with Oklahoma, right? Because that's all the Big 12 was. It was like rush 3 and we're going to drop 8 and we're going to try to give you nobody to throw to. But like on those cases, like you really got to watch the all 22, because you got to see like if anybody's open, like what the routes look like. Does he have a safety valve? Is there anybody to dump the ball off to? On first watch of that game, it looked like he did a really poor job with the 3-man rush. And I don't think the offensive line did a great job either. I mean, because they're only sending 3 guys. I mean, 2 guys are going to be double teamed, but the third guy's going to have a one-on-one. And like I felt like those pockets should have held up a little better. Jalen could have at least like skirted to the right or the left, tried to extend the play or stuff. And I thought they could have done better with that. Did you guys notice that when you were watching?
I thought they struggled early because he leads the league. It's only 2 games, but I'm talking about Flores. He leads the league in blitz percentage. So he blitzes more than anybody else. And he's also leads the league in what you're talking about, 3-man rushes with 8-man drops. Same team. It's freaking bizarre. He's a weirdo. Well, I think it works early in games. And same thing happened to them against Tampa. Baker Mayfield was like a mess early. And then by the second half, he's like, all right, I get it. And he goes right down the field, wins the game. But he doesn't have a lot of talent. I love the innovation of the guy. He throws things, but that's why I'm not concerned about Jalen. You're not going to see that. Nobody else is going to roll that out there. It's going to be more conventional, and he's going to settle down. So I'm not too concerned about it because it's such an outlier the way he plays. But he was confused.
I'll tell you what, John, it's a good thing that DeAndre Swift ran for 175 yards, because if he didn't, you would see more of that coming forward. Teams would go, hey, this worked. This is such a copycat league. Even if it goes against their general philosophy, you can stop the Eagles with just a 3-man front and drop a 9. Oh, you'd see a bunch of it. But
yeah, probably
the Eagles had the right answer. We're going to run it down your throats, and they did just that, and they won the football game. So kudos to. All right, so that's the next question, because Marcus gave me a surprising answer on this. He suggested or hinted at that Nick Sirianni was the one who in-game told Brian Johnson, let's run the football down their throat. So he said he spoke to the offensive linemen, and they gave him the side eye afterwards, and they said, yeah, we kind of knew we were going to be running the football as much as they did. Are we going to not give Brian Johnson the credit for making that call to say, hey, we're not moving the football. We know we can run it. Let's just run it. You got a feeling on if there was a main mover and shaker on the Eagles successfully deciding to switch over to the running game? Who made that call?
Well, I mean, without being on the sidelines, I would say that, hypothetically, when you have a new coordinator in there, at least early on, the head coach is probably going to be more involved, right? Before they then detach themselves and say, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. We're comfortable with it. I would think that Sirianni's involvement would be heavier to begin with, and then he would relax it, right? It's like, it's not like Shane, it's not like Shane Steichen where it's like, you got the keys to the car, man. I've seen what you can do. I trust you. Like, maybe there's going to be some training wheels with Brian Johnson to begin with for sure. So Sirianni's probably paying closer attention to that. Maybe he's got to hold his hand a little bit. What other cliche can I use here? Training wheels, hand holding. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, that would be at least my macro level thought, is that he's probably going to be a little bit more involved. It's like when you hire if we bring in a new employee or something, like my management style is just to like be hands off. Like Kyle Pagan will just go somewhere and do like a video, and then he'll be like, hey, we're going here. Okay, no problem. Because I'm hands off, and like I know that he knows what he's doing, and I trust them or whatever. But if we bring somebody new in, like, yeah, you got to help them along a little bit, and then you back off. So I could see that certainly being the case. Sirianni may be coming in there saying like, all right, hey, this is what they're doing. Let's switch to this, and then they start running the ball, and he backs off. So yeah, it's certainly plausible.
I want to use the Sirianni scale. We asked Marcus this as well, so I'll ask you. 2 of 10, he called the Jalen Hurts dust up with AJ Brown. A 2 out of a 10. I kind of look at the way they handled it after the game. The locker room didn't open for a while. It was like a loss versus a win. Typically, when you lose, it takes a little bit longer for them to open up the locker room. They haven't lost much recently, but when you win, that thing's open up right away. Everybody's celebrating. Everybody's happy. It was like a loss. And then he claimed at the post-game press conference, I don't know, even though everybody saw him talking to the two, then he had to sort of ease up a little bit.
Well, that's where the PR staff, real quick, but when they prep him for going in there, somebody from the PR staff should pull him aside real quick and say, hey, you were shown on television.
Yeah.
Yelling.
But he should have known. He didn't know that until I think it was Tim McManus who said, hey, you're on TV.
Right. So you kind of catch him off guard. And he's like, oh, well, I guess.
Guess I got to talk about it a little bit. I thought Jalen Hurts handled it tremendously. AJ Brown left the locker room. Typically, AJ's not a guy who doesn't talk to the media. I don't know. I got to feel like it's more than a 2 out of 10. Your thoughts on the dust up?
Well, did we decide whether it was more AJ Brown's frustration with not getting the ball or Jalen's larger level not being able to navigate that drop 8?
Well, we haven't talked to AJ yet.
AJ hasn't talked yet.
But the thought is, and Devontae kind of did the same thing. He was like, at first he said, "What are you talking about?" And then he kind of eased up a little bit and said he's just being competitive. And by the way, that's what I think it is.
We'll see
He's
that
just being competitive. But I think they handled it poorly. So what I point out, Kevin, excuse me, is I think it shows they're a little bit too tightly wound right now. They are cognizant of what's going on outside because all you do, he's a receiver. I talk about it all the time. Receivers want the football.
Yeah.
We've seen it a million times in every city. Good receivers want the football. It's not that big of a deal, but they sort of made it into a bigger deal.
Well, you come out with your game plan, you adjust your game plan, and you run the ball down their throats because that's what the defense is giving you. But doesn't necessarily mean that's what the offense wanted to do. Or AJ Brown just what's he going to do? Just stand there, do some blocking, run a bunch of dummy routes while DeAndre Swift runs for 175. Just because that's what the defense gives you and what's working doesn't mean that everybody's going to like it. Like, of course he wants to be involved. I think what I would do today, maybe I will do this today. That happened at the end of the third quarter, I guess. Is that when that was filmed? Or when they showed it on the TV?
In mid to late third, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so I'll go back and look at the all 22 from those 5 or 6 plays from that last drive leading up to that, like at the end of the third, and you can look for clues and you can see if you see frustration in the body language or him putting his hand up or Jalen not seeing something in the the 3-man rush or whatever. And because I would be more like, if I had to guess, it would be like, hey, here's what they're showing us defensively. This is where you need to go, and this is where I'm going to be. What are our zone beaters? What's our shallow stuff? Where's our release? What's our safety valve here? And I think it's probably a combination of the two things. Yeah, he wants the ball, but like, hey, this is where I'm going to have to get the ball and where you're going to have to go based on what they're showing us, So I think we go back and look at it and see if we can find some clues about, because it's impossible to parse that looking at the condensed game film. Like, you have to have the coach's film of that to see what was there. I was just looking at it the other day, and there was one instance, for example, where they had like 2 guys who were running, like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith were on like the left side or whatever. And they both ran deep, kind of slow developing ish routes. I think one was a go and one was like a deep post or something like that. And by the time they even got into their breaks, like Jalen was flushed, and he had nowhere to go with it. So it's like, you gotta, that's why we need these like pro football focused guys to say, like, how many times did he even have open receivers, or how many times did he even have enough time to get rid of? I mean, were the route concepts even there? Like, does he even have anywhere to go?
I love when people look at, certain, so if the progression is AJ and then maybe Dallas and Devontae's wide open on the other side of the field.
Yeah.
How does Jalen Hurts not see that? Well, his progression is on this side.
You can't even get, most of the time you don't get through all your, this is what people don't understand. It's like, you don't,
Right.
I had the pleasure of working with Beasley Reese at Channel 3 for a long time.
Yeah.
And he was a defensive back, and he would say, sometimes the quarterback can't even get through all their progressions before they got to flee or make a move or whatever, right? I mean, and you're not conditioned to go like, here's read 1, here's read 2, and here's read 3. They're all bunched together. Read 1 and read 2 are right there.
Yep.
And then you may not even get back to the other side of the field. So that's not how it works. That they're all they're all built in so that it's within your peripheral. You know what I mean? It's not, you're not like at a tennis match, like looking at different receivers. I mean, by that time you're flat on your back, but you can look at the route concepts and things like that on the all 22 and say like, hey, does this make sense? Does he have anywhere to go underneath? I mean, some of the times he didn't even have that.
All right, since you are a film devotee, as you've just proved to us,
I wouldn't say that much.
22. Oh yeah, I'm giving you that status because it's
Entry-level.
going to play into my final question. I can't even call it a hot take. I would say it's a tepid take because I've heard nobody else go down this road that I've gone, and I started before Sunday's games, and I'm certainly going to say it again last night because it showed itself to me on the final play of the Steelers-Browns last night. KK, have you, in the tape that you've been watching, the games that you've been watching, noticing that they're letting the defensive backs play this year? That they're not just throwing a flag for pass interference, shooting the Eagle-Viking game, the one that the D-back just grabbed AJ's arm. It was a blatant pass interference. They didn't call it. And every Eagle fan noticed that. They kind of skipped over the 2 pass interference that Eagle defensive backs had on Viking wide receivers because that didn't go the Eagles' way. But I'm seeing a lot of D-backs getting there, making contact over a guy's back before the ball actually gets there. And not only are the referees not calling it, but the referees in the booth are in on it too, going, oh no, they're looking at it in real time. So you got to really judge it in real time. No, we don't. You have slow motion instant replay. You go back and show me it, whether it was or wasn't pass interference. I think it's something that's come down from the highest offices at 345 Madison Avenue, that this is a directive from the NFL. We need to let our defensive backs play a little bit. You seeing the same thing I'm seeing, or am I out there on an island by myself?
No, I have noticed a lot of that where I'm saying that could certainly be a flag, and that could certainly be a flag. It's interesting because normally when they have a rule change or they emphasize something or they de-emphasize something, they will announce that and they'll say, "Hey,
they did not."
Nope. Yeah, and they did not. It's like when you're if you're playing a video game or something, they change something quietly without telling you, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, this seems different," but I mean, I think we would all probably, I guess the question, right, is like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Right. I would prefer to see fewer. I would always prefer to see fewer flags.
I think it's a good thing, but here's why I disagree with Jody. They're not helping the defense ever. They're not.
Well, right,
I
because
mean, that's not. Yeah,
I mean,
to me, it comes down to me and at Kevin_Kincaid. Make sure you follow Kevin on Twitter, X, if you prefer.
Yes, follow me on X.
Yes, crossandbroad.com. The grand poopah over there. My thought, bad calls. Hey, I've covering this league for 25 years, Kevin. It's ingrained in my psyche now. I've heard every coach say, control what you can control. That's why I never complain about officials. I don't complain. I'll talk about blown calls. I'll say, that's a blown call. That's a blown call. I'll say, they should do this. They should have full-time officials, but I'm not complaining about officials. They're human beings. They're going to blow calls. They blow calls.
I was
sometimes
a ref.
It helps. Sometimes it hurts.
I was a ref. I got yelled at more in those 8 months than I've ever been yelled at in my entire life. So it's like, mostly by the parents too. Next time I come on, I'll tell you the story about how we had to break up a fight in the stands between parents too. It's but yeah, I mean, no, back to the point. I just, like I said, it's, I think you make I think you're on the right track there. Cause yes, it's counterintuitive to think that almost every rule change or last X amount of years has benefited the offense, or protected quarterbacks or something like that. The defense does need to be thrown a bone at some point, maybe Jody's right. Maybe they,
I hope they do it. I hope Jody is right. I hope they throw the defense a bone. I hope they do. But
just like, and I don't know if I said it here. I know I said it somewhere. No one will go on the record and say there was an edict from Major League Baseball this year. Listen, if you can any way, shape, or form call it a base hit, call it a base hit. Don't call it an error. I know what I see with my own two eyes. There are errors everywhere, every night, and they're judging them as base hits. But no one will come up with the email, the deep throat email from Major League Baseball going, call hits, call hits, call hits. We all know that it happened. And I'm telling you, that's the case in the National Football League.
You and Anthony Sanfilippo should do a side podcast on that. You guys would get so angry and so
Sanfilippo is the guy who pointed it out to me before anybody else. And I said, God damn it, he's right. I see all these. How can they call him errors? I give Anthony a lot of credit for that. We give you credit when you jump in with us too, KK. We love you. We'll get you back.
Get some emergency going there, Kevin.
Yeah, we'll get some vitamins and we'll knock this out of here. All right.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Good.
Get a little something to that coffee, whatever it needs to be. Kevin Kincaid, Cross and Broad here with some Birds 365. All right, got to come back. Put a bow on the show. Stay right here on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore, have a ball, one smoke.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild weekday.
Up with this anymore.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
Mega Mac guys here on Birds 365. We want to thank both Kevin Kincaid and Marcus Hayes for jumping in. Both guys were both good and fun today. I appreciate them playing along with our silly reindeer games. J-Mac, nothing again today, right? Eagles even in the house? No,
nothing today. Coordinators tomorrow, and then everything's pushed back a day because Monday night. So the big practice Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the limited practice. Then they're down to Tampa. Monday night football. And we'll see if William Jackson is out there by Thursday because yeah, I mean, that's a former first-round pick. Played a lot of football. More of a slot guy. 30 years old. Is he better than what they have? Probably, if he's got anything left.
And if 30 sounds old, remember who the Eagles brought in on the defensive line last year. Not spring chickens when they needed help from outside the organization when they had defensive tackle injuries. They went out and got two very veteran guys who were helpful. So the Eagles are not afraid to, if it's just a fill-in type thing, go with a little age on the player. So that's a name we'll keep an eye on. All right, two last things. Number one, will the offensive coordinator Brian Johnson be asked about whose decision it was to run the ball down the Vikings' throats? Will he say, that was me? Will he say, well, Nick told me to? Or will he say, in the
He'll
course
say,
of the
I'll tell you what, I'll ask him. I'm going to guarantee, if nobody else does first, I'm going to guarantee he says, it's a collaboration.
Yeah, collaboration. I knew that's exactly where he was going. You and I see that one exactly the same. All right, and Monday night, we're still, now we got to go 6 more days before we get an Eagle game. But I got to give my guy, Johnny Mack, good news. 7:15 game. An early game. Although it's a night game, it's an early night game, 7:15, because next week is the last week of 2 Monday nighters. There's going to be another game on after the Eagles.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that. That is good news.
Eagles are the early Monday night game in Tampa.
That's big. That extra hour is
so that's an hour of your life. That
still not great, but it's better. It's better.
It is better because
thank you, Jody.
They've got the early game next week. And who's the second game? Bengals, Rams. I want to say whoever the Bengals are playing.
I ruined the Bengals season.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. Timeout, John McMullen. You ruined the Bengals season. Who'd you pick to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC?
The Bengals, didn't I?
Who did I pick to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC?
Jets.
The Jets. Who's more ruined, you or me? I'm 1-1. You're 0-2. But I'll tell you that I am way more ruined than you are.
That's true. You probably are. But I think Jake Browning might be the Bengals quarterback this week. So short term,
Jake Browning can outplay Zach Wilson 20 times. 20 times. I'd take
Jets got
times over Zach Wilson.
Jets have to do something. They're too good. They're too good. I don't know.
Who?
Matt Ryan? I don't know. But they don't have a good offensive line.
Did we watch Matt Ryan last year?
Yeah, but at least he knows what to do.
They're screwed. The Jets are screwed. Well, but again, we'd be out of time. This was a fun show today. I had fun doing it. You have fun doing it, Johnny May?
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Marcus, Kevin did a tremendous job.
We hope you had fun watching. We're going to do the same exact thing again tomorrow. So on your way out the
weeds
door,
again. I love when we get in the weeds and Marcus. They're talking
sometimes.
about holders.
We need a weed whacker to get out of Birds 365. For all 470 some of you who have streamed in right now, make sure you hit the like button on the way out. Help us out with our algorithm, because the Mac and Mac guys always need your help. Always appreciate you joining us, and we'll appreciate you joining us again in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.